Hello, I'm Chris Fisher. We're going to be reading Stanley in Space by Jeff Around. And I will read the foreword that he put in here. It's pretty interesting. Right here, that's the foreword, I guess. Will you meet us? Does anybody here from the great farness of space, from farther than any planet or star that has ever been mentioned in books, the question came again and again, will you meet us? Does anyone here? Very interesting. Chapter 1, The Call. It was Saturday morning. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop were putting up wallpaper in the kitchen. Isn't this nice, George? Said Mrs. Lambchop. Stirring pace, no excitement, a perfectly usual day. Mr. Lambchop knew just what she meant. Excitement was often troublesome. The flatness of their son Stanley, for example, after being his big bulletin board settled on him overnight. Exciting, but worrying too, till Stanley got round again. And that genie visiting, granting wishes, oh, very exciting. But all the wishes had to be unwished before the genie returned to the lamp from which he sprung. Yes, dear Mr. Lambchop, smooth down wallpaper, ordinary, the very best sort of day. In the living room, Stanley Lambchop and his younger brother Arthur were watching Tom Toad cartoon on TV. The sporty toad was water skiing and fell off, making a great splash. Arthur laughed so hard he didn't hear the telephone, but Stanley answered it. Lambchop residence, said the caller. He said the caller, the President of the United States speaking. Who's this? Stanley smiled. The King of France. They don't have kings in France, not anymore. Excuse me, but I'm too busy for jokes. Stanley kept his eyes on the TV. My brother and I are watching the Tom Toad show. Well, you keep watching, young fellow. The caller hung up just as Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop came in to watch the rest of the show. Hey, guess what? Stanley said. Hay is for horses, said Mr. Lambchop. Mindful always of careful speech. Who called, dear? Stanley laughed. The President of the United States. Arthur laughed too. Stanley said he was the King of France. Tom Toad vanished suddenly from the TV screen, and the American flag appeared. We bring you a special message from the White House. In Washington, D.C., said the deep voice of the announcer. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. The screen showed the President looking very serious behind his desk. My fellow Americans, the President said, I'm sorry to interrupt this program, but someone out there doesn't realize that I am a very busy man who can't waste time joking on the telephone. I hope the particular person I am talking to, and I do not mean the King of France, will remember that. Thank you. Now, here's the Tom Toad show again. Tom Toad, still water skiing, came back onto TV. Stanley, explained Mrs. Lambchop, the King of France indeed. Gosh, Arthur said, will Stanley get put in jail? There's no jail against being a telephone smarty, said Mr. Lambchop. Perhaps there should be. The telephone rang, and he answered it. George Lambchop here. Good. It was the President. I've been trying to get a hold of you. Oh, my, Mr. Lambchop said. Please excuse. Hold on. You're the fellow has the boy was flat once. Got his picture in the newspaper. My son Stanley, Mr. President, Mr. Lambchop said, to let the others know who was calling. I had to be sure, said the President. We have to get together, Lambchop. I'll send my private plane right now to fetch you. Fetch you all here to Washington, D.C. Mr. Lambchop gasped. Private plane? Washington? All of us? The whole family? The President chuckled, including the King of France. And that is the end of chapter.